and welcome back to the Electric Bee Quilting Company and our Quilt Along for 2025. This is the next video in our series, and today I'm going to talk all about my favorite notions. Now, sewing is awesome, but it comes with, a lot of accessories, which I personally really enjoy. Notions are those extra tools that just make sewing easier. Some of the things are things that I'm going to show you are things that you need, and some are just nice to have. So let's get into it and talk about my favorite notions. Now, the first thing, we've already talked all about fabric. So you have your fabric picked out and you got it either starched, washed, however you want it prepared. Well, what's the next thing you're going to do? Well, now we have to cut out our pieces. And so I kind of wanted to talk to you about a few of the tools that I use and love when it comes to cutting systems. So the first thing that you are going to need, and I apologize, all my tools are on the table in front of me, is some sort of cutting mat. Now this happens to be one from Fiskars, but I have a Creative Grids one in my sewing room. And what's really important when it comes to a cutting mat, at least for this project, a lot of us are going to be using fat quarters. So I would suggest that you get a cutting mat that's at least the size of a fat quarter. So a fat quarter is 18 inches by anywhere between 22 to 24 inches. So this one is perfect for that. So this is 24 inches by 18 inches. So it's the exact size of a fat quarter. It can fit on this cutting mat. And why that's really good is that you can lay out your entire piece of fabric and be able to cut. Smaller cutting boards are just fine, but if you really want to do, some of those long strips, it's nice to have a cutting board that's a bit bigger. The one that's in my sewing room is a full yard by 24 inches, I believe. So twice the size of this one, but this one would work just fine too. The nice thing about these mats, they're a self-healing mat, so they're a little bit, I don't know if soft is the right term, but you can make, you can cut on them over and over and over again. And for the most part, the lines that you're making with the rotary cutter pretty much get erased, unless you're cutting at the same place over and over again. But for these instances, I don't think so much. Maybe if you work at a fabric store. So you're gonna need some sort of mat or something that you can cut on. The next thing that you are going to need is a rotary cutter. I know that Olfa makes one that a lot of people really like, or I have a very small Fiskars one that I keep with my English paper piecing, but a few years ago, my mother got me the Tula pink one for, I believe, my birthday or Christmas, and this baby is expensive, but it's so nice. The thing that I really like about it is it's ergonomic, so it's got a really nice handle, and it's heavy. And I mean that in a good way. So this part is metal, and so it's got some weight to it, which I really like. And I mean, it's just really pretty. So I actually really enjoy this, this rotary color, but you don't need this one. You can get the Fiskars one if you so desire, but you are going to need a rotary cutter, especially one that has some sort of protection around the blade. You don't just want, blades sticking up all over the place. So you're going to need some sort of rotary cutter. I would also suggest getting some replacement blades. You're gonna need, sharp blades are the best for cutting, so make sure that you're putting in some new blades and so that you're ready to go when you go to cut. Last thing that you're gonna need is a ruler. Now, you can easily get away with only owning one ruler, one or two. But I'm going to show you kind of a wide variety, because the longer that I've been quilting, the more I value different size rulers. So this was the first ruler I ever got. And this one is what I would recommend to anybody that's new, because you can cut it basically anything with it. So this is a 8.5, this is a Creative Grids ruler, which I really like Creative Grids. They have these grippy dots on the back, so it really stays onto your fabric and doesn't slide around all over the place. That's really important. I really like it because it's super clear. The numbers are very easy to read. They have them in both black and white, so depending on what color your fabric is, it's often nice to have markings in both colors. It gives you a lot of the half markings as well as the full markings. I really like the fact, so 8.5 inches is a good size, but then it's the full 24 inch, well 24.5 length. So if you're gonna do a strip off of a fat quarter, This, you can cut the entire thing in one go, or if you're doing, you know, if we're gonna make binding strips and you have your fabric folded over, you can do full width of fabric, again, with this length. So this is probably my favorite utility sized ruler. I think you can make this entire quilt with just this ruler. In fact, I know you can. You can make everything you need to do with this ruler. So I would highly recommend this as a first one. But some other rulers that I really like, along the same veins of that first one I showed you, this one has become my like secret weapon. So this is a 6.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. And what's really nice is that it's smaller. So I can cut all those little pieces a little bit better. I don't have to like move my big ruler around, and I really enjoy having this. I just like how like small it is, yet, you know, any really of the sizes that I need are on here. For this project especially, we're doing 6.5 inch finished blocks. So I highly recommend a 6.5 inch square ruler to square up our blocks. I love the Creative Grid square rulers. I have a couple of them. This one happens to be 6.5 inches. What's really nice is the middle is easily marked. Your diagonals are marked. You know, everything is super nice. So when you want to square things up, one of these is perfect. Especially with this project, you know, they're going to be 6.5 inches finished. So just plop this down, make sure it's center, cut around the outside, voila. Love those. And then finally, I use this one a lot. It's just really cute. And I find I use it a lot for marking diagonals or just cutting small pieces. This is a 2.5 by 10 inch ruler, and it just says, I heart my quilty friends. And I do, I heart my quilty friends. So I really enjoy having this ruler as well. So now you've cut out your pieces. What are we gonna do? Well, the next one is to sew them. You obviously need a sewing machine for this portion. Now, really any sewing machine that can do a straight stitch will be just fine. I'll put in some clips here because obviously I'm not gonna bring my machine out and hold it up of my machine. So I have a pretty fancy Bernina. I have the Bernina 770. I've always been a Bernina gal. That's what I learned on. That's what my mom has. So therefore that's what I have. And I love her. I have the Tula Pink edition. If you couldn't tell, I love Tula Pink. So I have the Tula Pink edition of the Bernina 770 and I love her. I named her Tula after Tula. And Tula is a workhorse and I love her very much. And I couldn't do anything without her. So Tula is definitely a must-have item. But anything, any machine that can do a straight stitch will be just fine. I have a very old Bernina that can only do a straight stitch and a zigzag. And I mean, it's an old machine and it works just fine. You know, I've pieced quilts on it, you know, through various stages. So really any machine you have that can do a straight stitch, highly recommend. You're also gonna need some thread. So I would recommend for quilting, at least piecing, to use an 100% cotton thread. This one is my favorite. So this is Auriful. This is the 50 weight thread. And I really find that this is one of the best and highest quality cotton threads. Not only is it very strong, especially the 50 weight, which is what I would recommend for piecing, but it doesn't have a ton of lint. That's commonplace with cotton threads, is that they produce a lot of lint. And I find that with the Auriful, it really doesn't. This is my favorite color for piecing. So this is 2600, which is like a light gray color, but really I find that I can use it for anything, but you kind of want to think about what the colors are in your quilt. So this is going to be, you know, what's in those seams. A nice light media, you know, a nice light color will go with most fabrics. If your quilt is predominantly dark colors, like it's like a black quilt, black background, you know, dark jewel tones, you might want to think of using a darker thread for piecing, but really I basically piece everything with this, both in the bobbin and in the top thread. So I really like the Auriful thread. Again, this is 2600, which is like dove gray, I think is what it's called. And then you're gonna need some pins. I don't really have a preference when it comes to pins. They all just kind of live on this pin cushion. I really like having a magnetic pin cushion. And I really like having these are very thin, with a nice head on them. I don't like thick pins for piecing. I like really thin ones, and I am a pinner. I know some people quilt and piece without pins, but I have to have pins. It's how, you know, I try to line up all my seams. So I'll link some pins down below, but you know, in reality, anything that's thin, I think works just fine. So, and I really like having a magnetic pin cushion because you can kind of sweep everything up. Okay, last, well, I guess not last. So I'm gonna go through, so this is like a little caddy. They sell these, actually these are made by Quarter Shop. It even says Quarter Shop on there. This was one they did for a limited edition for their spooky box a couple years ago. It glows in the dark, but these are really nice. This is the one that sits right next to my sewing machine, and I'll kind of go through the tools that are in here that I have at all times. So a Frixion pen. These are so nice. This one happens to be one of like the more felt tip ones, but the make ballpoint ones. Frixion pens are super nice because they erase with heat. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using these on the front of your projects because it will come back with cold. So if your quilt or bag or whatever gets really, really cold, your lines will come back. But if you're, you know, especially when we do half square triangles or flying geese, whatever, it's really nice to use these on, you know, the inside of your seams to mark things. So I love Frixion pens. And then I just have a really fun, fancy pen that I use, you know, whatever. And a pencil. You just never know when you need one. This is a stiletto. This is the by Annie stiletto. I really like it. It's nice when you're pushing through really tiny pieces or you need to kind of like hold points together. These are really nifty to have, so you're not sticking your finger in under the machine. You're sticking this in there instead. These are the Tula Pink Snips. They are wonderful for trimming threads. You know, basically anything you need a little snips for. I love these things. I have a whole bunch, I think a couple of them, but this pair sits right by my sewing machine, but really any small scissors are essential. And last but not least, unfortunately, a seam ripper. This one's by Clover, but you know, really any seam ripper will do. Odds are you're gonna sew something wrong or something's not gonna line up or, you know, any multitude of things. So I highly recommend having a seam ripper, unfortunately. And then the kind of like last topic that I wanted to talk about is ironing. So, you know, after you've sewn your pieces and, you know, what do you do next? Well, you need to press open your seams, either to the side, one of the sides, or you can press your seams open, however you like to press. So I just kind of want to talk about irons. I've tested out a few different ones. I really like the Oliso iron. This again is the Tula Pink edition. I think I have a little bit too much Tula Pink. Actually, that's not possible to have too much Tula Pink, but I really like this one. So this again is by Oliso. What I really like about these is that they sit flat on your ironing table and they lift up. So when you put your hand on the handlebar, it lifts up and then, or it will go down, like the little feet will go down. So you can iron your piece and then you can just set it again upright. You know, you don't have to store it sideways like this, which I really like. Of course, you know, it's Tula, so it says don't feed the fish on the bottom, but I really like this iron. And then something that I began using a few years ago, I saw Kimberly Jolly at Quarter Shop use, is a Tailor's clapper. This one I can link down below, but any real piece of wood will work. And it's just really nice to, especially those bulky seams, like if you're doing a pinwheel or something where you have a lot of seams that are all coming together and you just want that sucker to be flat. I recommend using a Tailor's clapper. So you get it really hot, you press your seam and you set this on top of it and you basically just leave it there and you let it cool and it just holds it down. The heat will then absorb into the wood and it really does help keep your seams a little bit flatter. Oftentimes, if I'm piecing like in the evening, I'll put this down and then leave it there overnight. And I come back, my seams are beautiful. And then the last thing I'm just gonna chat real quickly about is a design board. This one I made myself. They're not that difficult. There's a lot of tutorials online, but basically it's a piece of foam board that I glued some batting on and then added some binding around the outside, again, all done with hot glue. And these are really nice to put your blocks on. So, you know, you sew your block, you can, you know, store them nice and flat, Or even like when you're laying your block out, you know, if you have a lot of pieces, you can lay them out on your design board. So then, you know, when you're at the sewing machine, you go, okay, this piece, this piece, this piece, etc. Again, Kimberly Jolly and Lori Holt use these all the time. I saw them, I was like, oh, that seems like kind of a good idea. So I made a few myself and I really like them. But yeah, those are the notions that I use. I hope you found this helpful. It's getting kind of exciting, you know, we're nearing Thanksgiving, and which means the New Year is just right around the corner, and we'll be starting the sew along. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope this was helpful. I've left links down below of everything that I can. So hope you're having a wonderful sewing day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.